Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome back to my hobby blog. Today I'm very excited to be reviewing Book 3 of Dune by Frank Herbert. This is Children of Dune. This is the edition that I have, which also includes a introduction by his son Brian Herbert, which I think I read, but I don't really remember anything about it. But I was really kind of nervous getting into this book because a lot of people don't really have any good ratings beyond the first book, and I was pleasantly surprised by book two. I was underwhelmed by how little story there was, but it more felt like an epilogue of book one, and it was really fascinating to see where all the characters ended up going. And it ended with Paul going into the desert. Didn't really know what was going on there. But this book, we are now 9 years beyond the end of book two. So at this point, the twins have been born, who are the children of Paul and Chani. And Chani has died in between books two and three. And Paul is, of course, missing. So we sort of have this community of Fremen and all of our familiar characters, such as Alia. We have Jessica, who is the grandmother of the twins, is Lady Jessica. So it's Paul's mother, is sort of how she's, I guess, related to them. And I really, really enjoyed that aspect of the storyline where the twins, I think, I can't decide if Ganima or Gamina, let me make sure the name is right. Yeah, Ganima. She is the daughter of Paul, and she, I think, was my favorite character of this book because there's so much really weird, like, identity things going on with Leto and also Ganima. But Leto, I think I like his story more, but I think the character of Ganima was a lot more interesting to me because she is, well, she and her brother are both sort of the sums of their ancestry, and they're able to go back in time and sort of use other identities, memories, and able to kind of figure out what's going on. And while this is all happening on Arrakis, we also have the other planet of Silas Secundus, I think it's called. It's where the House Carino is at currently. And the main POV in that storyline is Ferrodin. And I really enjoyed that storyline as well. He's one of the Sardaukar, who are sort of this more powerful, I guess, force. But they were sort of under the control of the Emperor during book one. And so they're just kind of going on with no leadership. And so Ferrodin wants to become sort of the king of all this and leader and all that. And there's just a lot of like plots going on in this book. And I really love all the different agendas that each character has. I really enjoyed, I'm trying to think, sort of the storylines with Stilgar, especially, because I didn't think he would be in this book, but he's one of my favorite characters in Dune, I guess, universe, and it was really fascinating to see all of these characters that I've read about in book one and in the movies as well. And we also get Duncan Idaho, who is sort of resurrected because he was killed in book one and in the movies, and he's brought back as a Gola, is what they call him. And there's just so many fun scenes with all of these characters, but especially Duncan Idaho and Stilgar and Lady Jessica, who comes from the planet of Caladan in order to kind of see what's going on, because there's a lot of plots going on with Alia and with the Bene Gesserit, because Lady Jessica has realigned herself with the Bene Gesserit instead of the House Atreides. And while all this is happening, as I said, at the end of book two, Paul just walks into the desert. We don't really know what is going on with him this entire book. We meet this character named the Preacher, who is sort of like Paul, is what everyone's assuming, but no one can confirm if it's Paul. And so we have a lot of scenes where Alia or Jessica or Stilgar or Duncan Idaho or anybody else watches the Preacher preaching, and they're trying to figure out if it's actually Paul or not. And I really loved this storyline, especially in this book, because I have no idea what's going on with Paul past book 1 and 2. This is my first read. There's no movies on these books, so I know nothing about it. I know where his storyline will end at because that was spoiled to me, but what happens in this book was like exactly what I wanted from, I guess, Paul in terms of his storyline, because I had a feeling that he was the Preacher, but I was open-minded to the idea that it maybe was not him. But then as we get the storyline with Leto, his son, Leto is exploring the deserts on Arrakis, trying to find the Preacher and trying to find evidence of this old siege called Jacurutu, which was really funny to me because, as some people may know, Steven Erikson, who wrote the Malazan Book of the Fallen, he was heavily inspired by Dune when writing Book 1 and lifted the format or the structure of Dune 1 for Gardens of the Moon. And there's a city called Jacuruku that is in, I believe it's Seven Cities or near, I don't know exactly, but it was just fascinating because Jacuruku seems to be named off of Jacurutu from Children of Dune, and I thought that was such a fascinating, I guess, thing to witness as a reader, because I was not expecting such a one-to-one. I mean, there's also Caladan Brood, named off of the planet Caladan. I made that connection years ago, but like, I really enjoyed all of Leto's scenes. I think he was my favorite in terms of storyline, but in terms of character, I thought Ganima was so fascinating. Just all of her internal monologues and speeches, and just all the weird memory scenes that we get throughout this book. But Leto, I think, just had such a fascinating story of exploring all these different sieges and meeting with Duncan Idaho and Stilgar, and some people think he's been killed and was eaten by a worm, but he really just called a worm because he has that ability now, and he calls the worm, gets on it, rides away, and then he meets with the Preacher, and during this scene where they're talking, Leto is sort of talking around, trying to figure out if this is his father, Paul. And eventually, the Preacher just goes out and says, like, yes, I am Paul, but I cannot be Paul. I cannot be Muad'Dib. I have to be the Preacher because I made a mistake. I did not mean to cause this jihad, but I think I know the path now. And Leto also is following a path called the Golden Path, I believe it's called. And he, during the scene, is sort of becoming this new life form while they're talking, because he's able to jump around really quickly. He's able to call worms now just with his thoughts. And it's just really fascinating because he's no longer human, Leto. And Paul sees this and he's like, oh, well, you took the chance that I avoided. I did not want to do this, and you can see why I did not want to do this, because your body is changing, and you're able to just do things humans were not able to do. And it's really weird. I really love all these scenes where we get Leto sort of discovering all his new abilities as he becomes a new life form. And it sort of seems like a mix between a worm and a human, but we'll see. And by the end of the book, after that meeting with Paul, we get this really fascinating speech between them two at the palace because Leto comes back and he's like, actually, I'm going to be in charge. I see the way forward. I know what we need to do. And here's my preacher. He's going to be with me from now on. And there's this really scary moment. I think it's still a guy, or maybe not Duncan Idaho, because he's been killed at this point in the book. But I think it's still a guy. He's watching Leto sort of give his speech. And he's like, there's nothing more scarier than looking at this person who I knew as Leto and realizing they're not human anymore. That's a creature up there. And they're going to lead the Fremen now. And that is really scary. And I really love that scene. I love that description of it because I started to get that feeling as well. Because Paul is definitely a villain. He caused billions upon billions of deaths throughout the universe. But I have no idea where we're going with Leto because Leto has such a new thing going on in the series that I never thought that this would happen. This was not spoiled to me. So I have no idea where we're headed with the storyline, but I do have book 5 or book 4 ready on the shelf. So I cannot wait to get to the book 4. And I just love this book. I think my rating is I gave it a 9.25 out of 10. I didn't want to give it a 10 out of 10. I don't think it's perfect or whatever. It's not up to that level. But I would say that the first half of this book does have a little bit of some pacing issues, but it's not because of the book. I think it's just personal preference. This took me just a few days to read. I did finish it very quickly. I read 200 pages yesterday, and I read the final 100 or so this morning, and it was not a hard read at all. I really enjoyed it. I don't know where all the difficulties are coming from in terms of why everyone is giving this book such low ratings, because I love this book. I think it's not as good as the original, but it's up there. I think it's much better than book 2. Book 2 was, again, just like 200 pages. It definitely felt like just an epilogue, but this book just felt like the, next big book in the series, and I absolutely loved it. I really hope that more people will read the sequels because I would love to talk more about these books, and I'm really excited to see what God Emperor has in store for me. Because that's the book I've heard is the weirdest, and I love weird. So I'm very much looking forward to that book. So yeah, that's really all I have for today. Thank you all so much for watching, and please have a great rest of the day.